Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. She streams the show live on Facebook on the last Tuesday of every month at noon Eastern. Get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn. And you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. I am so excited for my guest today, Beth Hoch, because as you all know, I say the earlier services get put in place, the better. And Beth is a director of a preschool. So Beth, go ahead and please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today, Frances. I am Beth Hoch. I'm a director of a small private preschool in Potomac, and we have about 60 children at our school. And one of the values that is most important to me at our school is that we are inclusive and have a diverse population. Prior to coming to this center, I was a special education teacher in early childhood for 13 years in public schools in Plano, Texas. And made the leap about 10 years ago when we moved to this area into the private preschool world. So at that time, it was something that was really important to me to be able to carry my skills and my values into this private organization and this work.
Yeah, and I love it. I love the preschool because there's so many preschools that don't have inclusion and they don't work with the families and because the teachers don't know or they just don't know how to do it. And that's what makes you all so special is that you work with the families and make it a full inclusive. And I know we've talked about this before, but why is it so important for the family and the outside team to talk with you and the rest of the preschool when you have a child that has some special needs?
Absolutely. We're really looking at the whole child in all settings. And when we're collaborating with all the outside services, whether it be private therapy, the school district, involving the parents, any other caretakers that might be involved, when we're involving all of the stakeholders, we're on the same page. It's so important that we're all communicating so we can make sure we're supporting the child in the best way possible. We know that early intervention is really key to achieving faster and better things sooner. And so when we can collaborate, work as a team, we can communicate, when we can have meetings together, support each other, be there to celebrate the successes, and be there for the challenging times. That is when the most progress is going to be made for the child and when everyone on the team is going to feel supported, which is so important.
That is so important. And then for the child also, the consistency. Because if the school is doing one form and then the therapist is doing it different and the home is doing different, then the child gets confused. And
absolutely. Yeah, those strategies and interventions need to be consistent, especially for the child to be able to generalize that to different settings. Sometimes something might happen first at home and we find out about it at school and can support it and try to work on that skill at school. Sometimes the child begins doing something here at school that the parent may have not seen at home. So when we are communicating and collaborating and celebrating and just talking on a regular basis, we can make sure that we are on the same page for the child, which, as you said, is so important.
Right. And so how else do you support children within the school, within your school when they have different abilities?
Sure. So, when parents apply to our program, one of the questions that we ask parents, among many, is, does your child have the identified special needs or learn differently? Have they ever received any outside services, maybe through infants and toddlers or maybe through private therapy? And so sometimes they're coming in the door, we know that, there might be some needs that we need to make sure we're communicating and that we know about ahead of time and make sure we can serve. Sometimes a child comes in and it is not until they begin when we realize, you know what, we're seeing something that we want to explore further and that we want to talk to the parents about to see if they've noticed it too. And sometimes it's holding a parent's hand through that process together and figuring out what the best next steps might be. How we do it in our school is through a supported approach. As I shared, my background as a special education teacher, and I believe that the classroom is made up of all kinds of diverse learners, even those that might not be identified as having special needs or differing abilities, and that the goal of a good teacher is to reach the needs of all the children in that classroom, whether it might be developmental, social emotional, cognitive, behavioral. We have to address all of the needs, and that's the job of a good teacher. How do we do that? We do that through knowing the child, through building a relationship with the family and the child. And the support comes from me to my teachers. The vast majority of my teachers, they're not special education teachers by training. And so they know that I'm here to support them and give them the tools. We're very, very lucky in this last year. We're just celebrating 1 year of having a new team member, and that's a director of curriculum and support services. And so her job is really to support the teachers, and whether that may be through visual aids, whether maybe it's setting the classroom up in a different way, sitting in parent communication, working with collaborative partners, observing and being able to give feedback. And so really, when all of those things are working together, myself and our support service specialists and the teachers, we really are able to provide that intervention. Sometimes we might say, you know what, this is not in our skill set, or we want to involve some outside therapists. Let me make a call and see who else we might be able to bring into the team. But for the vast majority of the situations, we're able to provide that support and help the family and the child make progress.
That's awesome. And so I know there's always a lot of concern with children, with families that don't have neurodiverse children. And if neurodiverse children are mixed into preschool, will that take away from their children because of the extra need? How does that work? And what do you see in the classroom when you do bring in neurodiverse children?
Absolutely. When we have a classroom that's filled with a diverse group of children, everybody benefits. The child who might be neurodiverse or have different abilities benefits in some ways, and what we might call the typically developing children, or children who are not identifying some other needs, benefit because they are being brought up in an environment that shows them that the world is different. The world, there are all kinds of learners, there are all kinds of people, there are people of all backgrounds, different families. We really look at how, we're all part of the same community. But more than that, we help the children identify that we might have differences, but let's focus on what we have the same. We both love trucks. We both love playing with baby dolls or magnetiles. We both wear glasses. We both, live in Potomac, whatever it might be. Let's focus on those, the things that are the same and that connect us and bring us together. And I've noticed, especially in this model, and this is starting my 7th year at the school, that the children become more caring, more compassionate. They want to be helpers. We had a child in our school with some orthopedic impairments due to a cancer diagnosis. And the children would rally around. They wanted to be the ones to get the walker, to make sure that child could access different parts of the playground, to make sure that child was sitting at their table because they wanted to include him. So it really transforms the environment. And I say that those children go off into the world, they go off into elementary school being ambassadors for the neurodiverse community and being more inclusive in the next place that they go, because they have a sense of comfort and knowledge from having children of differing abilities in their classrooms here.
You touched on something that I wanted to talk about also, is that one of the things I loved about your school curriculum is that not forcing a child to say, I'm sorry, because it's an empty I'm sorry. And instead teaching the children of what can I do to make it better. Can you talk a little bit more about where that came from and how you use that in the classrooms?
Absolutely. So I think it goes back from my time learning about love and logic from Dr. Jim Fay and Charles Fay. And it's really about teaching the children empathy and giving them control choices. When we teach the children empathy, we're having them do some perspective taking. When I do this, this is how my friend feels, or my teacher or my parent or my sibling feels. And we want them to be able to have that perspective taking, to know that maybe they hurt a friend physically, or made someone sad by something that they did, or maybe a friend's going through something that they want to be supportive. So when we help them identify the feelings, and a lot of that might come from just even from the time they're toddlers, looking at a face and what does it look like to be happy or excited or sad or scared, and giving them the vocabulary of a social emotional vocabulary. And so then when it's time to, I say that every situation that happens is a teachable moment, right? So it's not that we talk about having gentle hands in a book when we're only talking about that 1 week of the year. No, we talk about gentle hands all the time. If someone's pushing somebody or knocks something down, that's the teachable moment throughout the course of the day, where we're working on the empathy, the perspective taking, and the how can I make it better, right? Sometimes it might be, if the child is hurt, giving them a Band-Aid. Do you want to get the ice pack? Do you want to offer them a hug? If they knock their building down, you want to ask them if they want help rebuilding it. Or maybe they want to be left alone because they're sad, and we have to respect that too. So having them be the helpers in those situations, and being able to turn around what might have been not such a great situation into a more positive one, is really the strategy that we use in all those teachable moments. Now, once they get to be 4 and 5, those children are understanding more about I'm sorry. And that sort of comes more organically. But we also want to make sure, if they're expressing that they're using that word, they're sorry, that they say why and how it made them feel. And then what we want to do next time to change it, because we always have a do-over, right? We always have a chance to restart. And that's the message that we want to teach our children.
Right. And I love that, teaching them so young,
Mm-hmm.
so that as they grow into adults. And that goes back to, like, some of the things I talk about often in my videos, is that when sometimes doctors or some other educators will say, oh, wait and see, your child will catch up.
Yeah.
And I know, I hate that, because the earlier the child is
Yeah.
identified that there's something going on and get services.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it happens all the time. The pediatricians work hard, and they have a busy schedule, and the day is packed. And so they only have a small snapshot of a child when they're in that office for a well check or a sick visit. They're not seeing them in their natural environment at home or in school. And so sometimes they're not able to identify, just because they're not seeing them in those settings or have that opportunity, or maybe the child is not feeling well. And so, sometimes we encourage parents to talk to the pediatrician about what we're noticing here at school and what next steps can be taken, because the earlier that we begin the services, the better it is for the child. And that can be scary for some parents. A parent might say, I don't want, they don't need that. I don't want that. We don't want that label or that identification. And I really try to work with the families to have them set that aside, and let's just focus on what's difficult for your child right now, and how can we help them do that. And sometimes it can be harder for some parents to be as agreeable, because I think there's a sense of discomfort, and they're scared. It's unknown. But when we build that trusting relationship with the parent, and they know that we care and we're on their side and their child's side, and we're going to hold their hand through this process, that goes a long way.
Yeah, it is definitely scary. And I know for a lot of us of the older generation, back when I went to school, I remember it was like, oh, the special ed kids, and they're in the back. And so, we grew up with, like, it was a shame to be of, you didn't want to be labeled, and the kids couldn't go to college and all of that. But these days, I mean, colleges all have disability offices, and there's ways of getting through and getting the supports that you might need.
Absolutely. I mean, so many of our children, I would say, they might be dismissed from services before they go to kindergarten or in elementary school. And so by the time they're in high school doing calculus and physics and, AP English, those services were so long ago, but having put those supports into place helped get them to where they needed to be, or where they were at that time.
Yeah. Right. And teaching the skills earlier so they don't develop the bad habits. Because I've seen that happen also, is that children that don't get identified early for whatever reason have modified their behavior, however it might be, to overcome things. And then sometimes the bad habits, it's harder to go back and unteach to reteach the right skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we've been in that situation before. I think it happened more when I was teaching children that were a little bit older than our young preschoolers. For the vast majority of times, when we can get that early intervention in place here, we're seeing progress pretty quickly. Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yeah, I know. I mean, my older daughter was speech delayed, and I remember, somebody said, "Oh, she's still a little young," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm getting her identified now." And we put, the language, because she was expressive language delayed, we put that in place. It's, through the county, plus we did private, and then her expressive language just exploded.
Yeah. Sometimes, a family might be going through infants and toddlers or the county, and the child might not qualify for services in the county because they don't have enough of an impact. That doesn't mean that the family can't access private services. So sometimes it's, they don't qualify for the county, but you know what, if we can get those private services in place, that's still important. And if it's doable, let's get that going. Yeah.
Definitely. Because it's the education part that is sometimes difficult to get.
Right. Sure.
Or to argue the atypicality of it.
Sure.
And eligibility. It can be a challenge. And that's why I often tell parents to reach out to talk to an advocate or an attorney, because there are ways that we can sometimes find children eligible that the schools might not always find.
Absolutely.
I want to talk more about the curriculum you do at your school, and why you feel it's the best curriculum in the environment.
Sure. So in a more traditional early childhood setting, a teacher has all the knowledge and they're imparting it to all of the children, and the children are receiving all of the information. In this more progressive style of education and more of an emergent curriculum, we see the children as co-collaborators in the learning. The environment in the classroom is set up as an invitation for learning. Let me give you an example of what that might look like. Perhaps in the classroom, in a 2s or 3s classroom, they're learning about farm animals. And the first day that the child comes in, there might be some small world play, which is maybe a bin filled with some mud and a gate and a little farmhouse and animals. And the children are able to create this farm scene. But that's even before the teacher might introduce, we're learning about farm animals. So the children are curious. Ooh, where'd this come from? What's going on? Maybe the teachers planted some books in the library around their classroom on farm animals. Maybe farm animals and hay bales were added to the block center. All of this before that the teacher might introduce it. It sparks the learning. It gets the children curious and asking questions. We want the child to ask questions. And sometimes a teacher might have the information, and they might say, I don't know. What do you think about that? Where can we learn more? And so let's help the child learn that they are an important part of the learning process, whether that's looking it up together, finding some books, doing some research. And so, the children really thrive when the environment is set up in a more emergent way, and the children are co-constructors in the knowledge. And so that doesn't mean the teachers are not going to read a story or introduce a concept. But when we're thinking about the big picture of all of the different activities and learning and experiences, we want that to come in a more constructive, emergent way.
Right. I love that, because it's that curiosity at a young age and love of learning to learn more. And you get that when the child is young, I don't think it ever goes away.
Absolutely. You know? This is we want to create that spark and that joy for learning, whether it's reading the books or asking questions or discovering things. We have an incredible STEAM program. That's our science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And the teacher of that program says her classroom is all about the 4 C's: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. Those are life skills, right? And so the life skills, the social emotional foundation happens in early childhood. If we send a child to kindergarten, they know all their ABCs and are doing addition and subtraction, but they can't sit still or be a good friend or communicate or problem solve or persist with a challenging task, then we're not successful, and we're not giving them the right foundation. So we really believe our values and the way that we approach education sets the children up for success now and later in life.
That's so true. I love that, because I know, especially here in Maryland and Montgomery County, how expectations of children on the learning, core
Sure.
concepts and stuff has gotten a lot more difficult when the kids are even younger ages. And, people are like, oh, my kid's in kindergarten and they don't know their letters yet, or they can't read yet. And it's like, but how are they as a kid? How are they as a human being?
Absolutely. Yes, that's so important. When I tour families at our school, I make it very clear that we believe that social emotional foundation and communication piece is the most important piece of early childhood. And so, so many parents in the county come in, is my child going to be ready for kindergarten? They're worried. They know that kindergarten looks so different today than it did when they went to school, or even maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And when they see the children coming home with these new skills and in a more organic way, when they see the children being able to do so many of the kindergarten readiness skills, but all in a play-based way, they're amazed. And time after time, they come back and say, thank you, my child was ready for kindergarten. And you were right. The most important part was that they could sit and attend and focus and communicate and collaborate and deal with disappointment. There's so many important social emotional skills that we work on throughout the course of the day.
And I say that often, is that the social emotional and the, being able to be in a classroom and communicate with friends and have that interaction, it's not something you can really teach later on.
Yeah.
Because you get set in your ways. If you don't know how to collaborate and then other things get in the way, it's hard. Whereas when you grow up doing it from the age 2 or 3.
Right. Absolutely. And that doesn't, still we see children who might have, difficulty with that, right? The social emotional skills maybe are on a different timeline in their development than other children in the class. But when we look at, the antecedents for why that's happening, and put, what's the function of different behaviors, and how do we meet the needs of the child, and how do we give them that skills, and unpeel those layers, we can help them make the progress in those social emotional skills on a timeline that works for them. Yeah.
Right. Which is also important with our neurodiverse children, is it doesn't matter. I hate a lot of times in the parent groups on Facebook and stuff, they're like, oh, my child's not walking yet, or my child's not speaking yet. And that's okay. Relax, let your child develop at your child's pace, put supports in place if necessary, but slow down.
Right. Yes. We do a lot of talking about that. Each child develops in their own time, and we want to get them an upward trajectory. And as long as we're moving in that direction, we're doing the right thing. That doesn't mean sometimes there might be a little blip and we have to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. But what we do is we support the family and the child through that process, and continue to move forward and keep it positive. There are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be things that are really challenging for your child, whether they are neurodiverse or not. But when you lower the pressure and you put the supports in place, and when you love them and believe in them and support them, they're going to get there.
Right. That's so true. It's so important. Talk to me a little more about like your teachers and how they support. Like I know you said that you have the special education background. How are your teachers, within this environment and knowledge of maybe seeing or identifying issues?
Yeah. So I would say that, all of our lead teachers and the vast majority of our associate and assistant teachers have been working with children for a long time. And so even if they don't have a degree in special education, they're able to identify when something looks a little different or when a child might be not quite where they, other children might be. And so we just do observing. Especially at the beginning of the year. That's the time when everybody's adjusting to a new situation and there could be bumps in the road, right? We have to develop community. Everyone has to learn the rules and the expectations and the routines of the day. And, after quite a bit of observation, we're looking at maybe 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the child. We're sort of, if we're not seeing the progress where the teachers would expect, then we're going to start to talk about some interventions and some more communication in place. So they're able to generally identify in those different developmental areas, fine and gross motor skills, the social emotional development, the self-help skills, the cognitive or pre-academic skills. They're really able to see, I think this is an area that they could use more support. And so sometimes the teacher has such a wealth of knowledge and they're already putting modifications and accommodations and strategies in place. Are there times that might be consulting with our support service specialist or myself and say, hey, can you come in and take a look? Now, my support service specialist and I, we're in the classrooms every day, throughout the course of the day. So we have a good buzz of what's going on, which is so important for a director. But really being able to dive a little bit deeper when the children are around with the teachers about what they're observing and what strategies they put in place and is really important. And bringing the parents in, right? Openly communicating with parents about something that we're seeing that we want to make sure that they know we are targeting this area because, we see that they need a little bit more help in this area, or perhaps it's a conversation of, needing those outside services. A lot of times I use social stories for many of our children. And so myself or my colleague will make social stories, not only for children on the spectrum, but for children of all abilities, even children who we might not consider neurodiverse, that are just having difficulty adapting and learning a situation. And so we use a lot of digital books that we customize for children to help them through difficult situations. So sometimes that help comes naturally through with the teacher's knowledge. Sometimes it comes in with us meeting and providing more support. I talked about those visuals or classroom setup or providing some different breaks or sensory, what does the child need and how are we going to put that into place? So there's ongoing communication, an ongoing celebration of the progress, an ongoing talk about what's working and what's not working and what we need to tweak.
I love that, the social stories. I know when my daughter was attending the school that when COVID hit, how you wrote those books and did those pictures and did the masks and without the masks so that, it was so amazing. I was like, wow, do all preschool directors do this? Which I'm assuming no.
Yeah, I think it's something. I think it's something special, but it's something that really is important to me because it gives the children and the parents a sense of comfort when they know what's coming, and what the expectations are. So I really love using them for all children.
Yeah. So that brings me to. So I know you're in Potomac in Montgomery County, Maryland. Mm-hmm. What are some things like? Do you have some advice for parents when they're looking for preschool?
Sure.
What kind of questions should they ask?
Great question. What kind of question? Talk a little bit about, let's talk about the teachers first and the director. What kind of experience do the teachers have? I'm going to put my hat on as a parent with a child who's been identified as being neurodiverse, having a special need. I'm going to put that hat on. So if I'm that parent and going to tour schools, I'm going to be saying, what kind of experience do you have as a director? What supports do you have in place? What information do the teachers have about helping support a child who has sensory issues or who might have some social emotional delays, and finding out have they had children in their school who have had delays in this area. Can you talk to other parents in the school who have who can be like recommendations for how that school worked with that family and that child? That's really important. I always say that the best recommendation I can get is a happy parent who's referred another parent to our school and who knows about our services. So I think that's really important. Observing, going to the school, and COVID, we're coming out to a place where now parents are getting back to in-person tours. Observing, what does the classroom look like? Are there visual aids in the classroom? Is the classroom set up in an organized way? Are things labeled? Are there routines in place? Are the classroom expectations known? Do the children seem happy? Is there laughter? What's the affect looking at the teacher and their disposition, right? Happy teacher means happy children. Is it a joyful place? And do the children seem like they want to be there? Those are, I think, really all important things. And of course, looking at the big picture, if you're looking for, a school that has, the religious piece, or that might have, whatever specialty you're looking for. I think, it's important to have that discussion. But if I had my hat on as that parent, I want to really be able to see things in action, hear about the supports, and communicate with parents who have been through that school. Yeah.
I love that you focused it on the teachers in the school, because one of the things I know that's so important is to talk to the director.
Yeah.
And see, I know your preschool is so phenomenal because of you. Like, you're behind it because you do the hiring, you do the curriculum, you make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to be. And you're hands-on, like you said, you're in the classroom every day.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's other preschools that directors don't do that.
Yeah.
That they're more hands-off.
Yeah. And I think that's something that our teachers really feel good about, that it is a supportive place, not only for the child and for the parents, but from myself to them and the child and the parents. And when the teachers feel supported, they're able to do their job better. And when they have the knowledge, right? So many of our teachers don't come with that special education background, and they are forthcoming and say that I don't have the training to, I don't know anything about this need or that need. And so a lot of times it's, let's sit and talk. Let me educate you. Here's some things we can put in place. Or you might not even know you're doing these things already for other children that could benefit this child. And as I said, sometimes it's bringing in some outside services. We're a private school setting. And so I really want to continue for our school to be a place that neurodiverse learners can be. But I understand that we're not a public school, and that sometimes we're not the best fit for every family, because of the support we may or may not be able to provide. But if we can provide it, if we can put those supports in place, if the parents are collaborators, and we can make the magic formula come together, it makes my heart sing for the child and for our school.
Right. And I love that you say that, because you're a fabulous, amazing school, but it might not be the right fit for somebody, which doesn't mean your school's bad or anything. It's just not the right fit. And I know that, especially, throughout children's lives, placement is so important.
Yes.
And the environment they're in.
Absolutely. So
tell me more how people can get in touch with you. Tell me about your school, if you feel comfortable going, telling the name of your school and everything.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I am the Early Childhood Director at Har Shalom. Our school is the Sherman Early Childhood Center. We're located inside Har Shalom, the synagogue here in Potomac. If people want to get in touch with me, my email is bhoch@harshalom.org. But also, let me give you our website. You can learn all about our school on our website, and my contact information is there. And our website is www.shermanecc.org. We have a wonderful school community. We welcome children of all faiths and all backgrounds and all kinds of families and neurodiverse learners to be part of our school. That's really important. We celebrate that, the diversity in our school. And so if you're looking for a school and we sound like we might be a match, I encourage you to reach out to me, email me, give me a call, and let's set up a time to talk.
I love that. Thank you so much, Beth. I loved having you on the show. And if you loved hearing Beth, you can reach out to her, talk to her about her preschool. And don't forget to subscribe below to my show so that you can see when I have future guests. And if you have any ideas for future guests, please feel free to throw them in the comments and I will see what I can do about getting them. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Frances. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.